fish tank in the background. Great. Hi, Janet. Hello, universe.
We made it.
We made it, yes. Anyone who attempted to tune in the other day, we had some technical issues.
We did. I'm sure it was all my fault, but we're here now.
I mean, classical music and technology, not two things that often go together, right?
It's true. It's true. Everyone tells me that I have to have like better social media presence and all of that kind of thing, and I know I should, but it's,
Yeah, but it's also like feeding the monster, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
I just want to sing.
Yeah, totally. Like, why do I have to talk to people on the internet?
I know.
Totally. Hello, everybody. I'm Evan James Lawson, Artistic Director of Forest Collective. Janet Todd is joining me, wonderful soprano. Janet is stepping in at the last minute for your brother, Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
So Daniel, as some of you would know, is our core tenor. He's done many Forest gigs over the years. He's also our writer-in-residence and has been writing our blogs and helping me with our copywriting and just sort of generating the written content that we make. But Dan unfortunately had another opportunity and he took it, which is totally fair. And Janet, who has been living in the US for 5 years?
Almost 7. 6.5
Wow.
to 7.
Wow.
Time has flown.
Yeah, that's mad. Janet happened to be in town and can do the gig. So we're absolutely blessed and lucky to have Janet with us. So Asia in Focus is the concert that we're talking about, occurring on the 16th until the 18th of July at Abbotsford Convent. If you can hear water running in the background, that's my fish tank. So just so you know, the house is not flooding. I don't have any leaks going on. Don't worry. And as a part of the Asia in Focus concert, which has been curated by Ali Fife, our amazing saxophonist, Dan, who lived in China for a few years and was really exploring his Chinese heritage and learning Mandarin while he was there, and also investigating a lot of local repertoire and songs and trying to sort of learn more repertoire in Mandarin, came across a number of songs by the two composers that we're featuring in Asia in Focus from the vocal music and contributed those songs to the program. So perhaps we can talk a little bit about those songs, because my understanding is that one of the composers is no longer with us, but the other one is still alive, I believe. You might not be fully across them.
Yeah.
But from what Dan told me, one of the composers was one of the first people in China to use the 12-tone system, which I think is really fascinating. So if you know the Cultural Revolution, the kind of throwaway of Western European traditions, and if a composer managed to live through that and still write with European stuff. So you're probably just only starting to learn the songs, but is there a sense of like Chinese-ness about them, or are they strike you as very kind of westernized songs, or?
There's a bit of both. Definitely, I mean, I've never sung a Chinese 12-tone song.
Yeah.
But still somehow in there is still a Chinese sensibility.
Right.
Just in the way the melodies are structured around that. But in that one particular one that on the mountain road, that particularly has a very like Western lyrical feel, almost operatic.
Cool. And have you sung in Mandarin before?
I've sung a couple of pieces in the past, just here and there, but not really. I haven't focused a lot on Mandarin music in the past, and so it's definitely a new experience singing in the language.
Does it have, like, I think people have maybe, or Western, non-Mandarin speakers have a bit of an attitude that it's like very much about tone and inflection, and that you can have one word or vowel sound, but depending on your tone and inflection, it changes the purpose. Is that sort of reflected in the music in a way?
It is, and that's where it gets quite tricky, because when you're speaking the poetry, it sounds a particular way, but when you're trying to fit it around the music, you have to kind of give a little bit in order to make the sound.
Yeah.
But still make sure you have that inflection in there.
Yeah. It must be hard.
It's really hard, actually.
And then still being like, oh, I've got to sing a C.
Yes.
And like get the note right.
Yeah, but it can be extremely beautiful when it's when it's executed. And again, I have my brother helping me, which is amazing. He's so good.
Yeah, he's very good, and he's been working really hard on those sorts of things. How do you bring that style and language into this type of communication?
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So we've got a few songs that Danae Killian, our amazing pianist, will be accompanying you with, and then the On the Mountain Road song, we're actually arranging that for the full, I am arranging it for the full ensemble, and that will be conducted, which will be such a joy, because I think the last time you and I worked together directly was Calypso in 2013.
Yeah.
Which some of our Forest patrons might remember was my first opera that we premiered in 2013. And again, I think you stepped in at the last minute for that one too.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Because I wrote the role for a different singer who wasn't able to do it, and I think maybe a month out or so. You were like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, it's my style.
Yeah.
No, that was a really long time ago now, but yeah, that was fun. I'm so happy to be working with you again.
It's going to be so nice. And you do quite a bit of new music.
Yeah, yes, I've done my fair share of new music over the years.
That's amazing, and it's such a challenge as a singer. Do you want to speak a little bit about like maybe some horror stories or some maybe not horror stories, but like challenges that you face? Because it's composers and singers, it's always a very it's a very rocky road.
Yeah. Because I've done, I don't think I have any horror stories.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's great.
But definitely, yeah.
Maybe I need to challenge you a bit more on write something wild.
There definitely is an element when you're performing new music and like brand new works, and you're working directly with a composer who is extremely invested and extremely connected to their work. If something doesn't necessarily work very well, it can be a challenge to kind of like have those conversations and
the collaborative element is like one of the most challenging, isn't it? Because if you're same as a conductor, like there's often times you're brought in at the last minute. If you're trying to breathe life into something for the first time, and there's a lot of problems that need fixing, how do you navigate that with a new work and a composer you might not have had a relationship with?
Yeah, but at the same time, that is also a positive point because collaboration is great.
Yeah, as long as the attitude's right.
Yes, that's true. And it can turn into something even more great when you can have that direct conversation with the composer. Because sometimes you perform works where you're like, I wish I could ask the composer who died 300 years ago about this.
Exactly. Like, could we ask Mozart, why did he do this?
What's with this, Mozart?
What's with this? Yeah, totally. And as a composer, it's like, you know, when you're working with canon art form, we slave over those things. And perhaps, like, if Mozart was in the room, I would assume, like most composers I work with, you'd go, oh, this isn't quite working, or that's a little awkward, and they go, okay, change it, make it a crotchet, make it a quaver, put it over here, take it down an octave. And I think that's the thing I always adore working with, especially singers, because I think singers, instrumentalists of course work their butts off, but singers, there's just such a different type of approach when you have to live the music in your body, that when they're learning new work and you're the composer, it's like the trust element, it's just not like pressing a button on a piano. There's so many different things, and so singers become to it they learn the work so well that they try and do it like exactly like on the page, and then often I have to actually ask the singers more and more, what you're doing this amazing, but like there's probably things in there that you've had to adjust to make better. Tell me what was wrong. Like, I need to improve my technique. So it's, singing new music is just something that I find so fascinating. Yeah. So interesting.
I love it though.
That's great. What some of like the composers, like living composers that you've worked with, that you think oh my god, I really adored that piece, or I'd love to hear more from that composer?
I don't know.
Too many to know.
I know.
Yeah. Picking your favourite.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, any particularly in the US? Like, were you doing some new music singing in the States?
Yeah. I was working with this company in LA called New Opera West, and I love them because they were a brand new company,
cool.
and they branched out from UCLA, and they give a platform to like young composers, and there were so many great works that came through that company. Mark Weiser is the guy that runs it, and a lot of his works are staged through that company as well.
Cool. Fully like chamber operas?
Yeah, I mean it varies. Yeah, there have been a few like fully staged productions, small scale chamber operas.
Yeah. I'm just going to quickly check that the feed is working okay. Yeah, we are so good. Yeah, I mean, American new opera is like, it's something I really envy here. I wish we could try and build more of a culture here in Australia, because there just seems to be so many innovators and companies that are taking risks in the US and that are really trying to do contemporary opera, and the breadth of it, like companies that are working with First Nations artists through to new work, you know, and that new work might be more conventional through to like really experimental works. And it's like across the whole country. It's like you're seeing companies in Texas, you're seeing companies in the big cities, you're seeing companies in the small cities.
Yeah. And even the major opera houses too, which tend to go with more mainstream repertoire, are throwing a lot more new music in there as well, and commissioning works.
And like, did you ever come across, I think it's called the American Opera Project?
Oh, no, I didn't.
They're like a peak body in a way that work with the majors to like kind of co-commission and that sort of thing. But they do also a lot of like development work, say like you're an independent producer in middle of nowhere, Ohio, and you want to put on, you know, there's like small grants or developing projects that they have.
Yeah.
And I just like, it's such a no-brainer to have something like that.
Yeah.
And I wish in Australia we had that same sort of network of resource sharing and nurturing of independent work and emerging artists. So yeah, America always inspires me for that. But you worked a lot with Pacific Opera Project,
yeah.
And they did Madame Butterfly in Japanese, is that right?
Yeah, it was a bilingual production.
Cool.
So the Japanese characters sang in Japanese and the American characters sang in English. So the director of the company had always thought, how would they have possibly been able to understand each other? And what was so interesting about it is that you could kind of see how the relationship, like you could see the relationship between the two of them in a different light, because like in the real world back in the day, they wouldn't have been able to understand each other, and they fall in love regardless, and the communication is different.
Yeah, more potent maybe, yeah. Is that, like, there's none of that in the opera, is there, of like, this is how you say hello, or any of that kind of...
Not really.
You don't see that in the opera, do you?
No.
It's just like, they're in love, the plot then goes on from there. So interesting. So how does that, I guess that's a different thing because you're singing melodies that like, you know, innately, but then transposing Japanese into that, like, were there things that you learnt that you're finding again with doing the Mandarin repertoire?
I'm finding it's very different.
Okay.
I thought it might be in a similar vein, but Japanese is almost like Italian to sing because it's pure vowels.
Wow.
Yeah, like very like each syllable has a pure vowel most of the time. I mean, a couple of the sounds are different that you wouldn't find in most Western languages, but it was surprisingly very pleasant to sing in and very lyrical.
Cool.
Yeah.
And how did it work? Like, I imagine you would have had a lot of coachings for it. Like,
well, actually, this is a bit of a crazy story how this came about because I was a last-minute understudy.
Right.
When the rehearsals began, I was supposed to be working with a company at a different time, and he said, "Oh, I know you've just sung this role because I just sung it with Opera Columbus in Italian. Just in case, it would be great to have somebody that could jump on in an emergency in any language." And then
just learn it in 15 languages. Is that okay?
And so actually 10 days out, the soprano got really ill and couldn't carry on, and so I had to relearn the entire opera in Japanese in 10 days.
Kudos to you.
So I had a lot of coaching. The conductor was Japanese, and I had a lot of one-on-one coaching.
Amazing. Had they done the translation?
Yes.
Okay.
They had.
Great.
So I mean, it was lucky. I mean, I would have liked to have had more time to delve into it, but having just done it in Italian, it was a benefit because I knew what every phrase meant, and yeah.
It was you're not into learning the entirety of the role at least.
No, it's not just singing 3 hours of random syllables.
Gosh, amazing.
But it was a beautiful production. And there's just it really brought something different to that music being sung in Japanese. It was just like you learn like different ways of being expressive in different languages
and context of the character and authenticity, which that book comes at a time from very Orientalism, very westernized view.
Yeah.
So,
and it was amazing how the subtlety of the language could really carry in this like big Italian repertoire.
That's cool.
Yeah. So like you could bring more elements of like delicacy and things like that, and those things were more expressive than Italian belting and chopping ones. Yeah. Anyway.
When I was in Nagasaki, I went to the tea gardens or whatever, which is where it's set. Like, so when she sings Un Bel Dì, she's meant to be on like this hill watching the ships. Is that Un Bel Dì, or is that later on? That's Un Bel Dì, yeah. She's watching the ships coming to the bay, and I was there looking at, and it's like this steep hill like this, and you can see the port, and there was like a little museum there for the history of the tea rooms or whatever, because that's like where the Dutch would come and trade, and probably the Italians and all these people. And they had in the museum, Puccini had donated to them one or two items of costume from the first production, so like the headdress and some dresses that were in the original showing, which was quite cool. Yeah,
cool.
Sitting there in a dusty old museum in Nagasaki. That was quite nice. And it was, again, like context, you're like, oh, there's the ships.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the, this is where they would have climbed up the hill to, blah, 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 this is where the cannons would have gone off and all that stuff. Yeah. It was really, really interesting. Yeah. Does this company that you worked with, is that something that they often do? Are they like rethinking repertoire in that way?
Yeah.
Is that production gone on to other performances?
Yeah, it was in conjunction with another company called Opera in the Heights, which was based in Houston.
Okay.
And it went to Houston and they did a run there, but they're hoping to do it again.
Cool. With you?
Well, hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah. If you're out there, if you're watching, Janet's available.
Yeah,
cool. And have they looked at other major repertoire that has that same kind of language thing, or?
I think that's probably been the most ambitious production that they put on to date.
Sure.
But they're always seeing productions in different lights and presenting them in different ways. It's an innovative company.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you're heading back to the US today?
Yes.
Amazing.
Visa permitting.
Yeah.
Always.
Do you have anything lined up gig-wise at this point, or are you just kind of getting a lay of the land? I guess post-COVID, who knows what the world looks like, really?
Yeah. I mean, I will be working with Pacific Opera Project,
Great.
but all of that stuff is TBD.
Sure, nothing to plug yet.
No.
Exciting. And you'll be going back to LA at this stage, or you're not sure? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes, I'll still be based in LA.
Amazing. Well, Janet, Todd, what a pleasure.
Oh,
So nice to have you back.
Thanks for having me here. I'm so excited for the concert.
It's going to be lovely.
Yeah.
We are talking about many things,
Yes.
but Asia in Focus, Janet will be joining Forest Collective and myself at the Abbotsford Convent from the 16th until the 18th of July. You can book your tickets at forestcollective.com.au. All the money that comes from the ticket sales goes directly to paying for artists. So buy tickets, bring 48 of your closest friends. There'll be a bar. It'll be a really lovely performance. There's beautiful songs in the show. There's world premieres. There's really cutting edge music. There's really sumptuous, beautiful music. 2 pieces by Toru Takemitsu, the sort of very famous, well-known Japanese composer, which are just so otherworldly and beautiful and moving, through to 2 new works that are quite cutting edge, really interesting pieces, and then these beautiful romantic songs. So something for everybody. So be sure to check it out. We'll see you there. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to turn this off now.